Hey everyone, it's Carissa and welcome to Saturday, where we are celebrating the weekend by getting our craft on. And today we are going to play a little peekaboo. Get it? Halloween boo. We're going to create 3 different projects with some peekaboo windows on them. And here's a look at some of the products I'll be using: that Essentials by Ellen Got Candy stamp and die set, as well as this Avery Elle Boo die set. And I've taken this spider web die from the Avery Elle die set, and I have found a circle die that is just a teeny tiny bit smaller than that spider web because I want my spider web to span these peekaboo windows, and so I need it to be just a little bit smaller. And I'm creating both my card base and my card front out of some Neenah Solar White cardstock. The card base is made out of the 110-pound cardstock, and the card front is made out of some Neenah 80-pound cardstock. I'm going to adhere these together with a little Scotch Post-it tape just to keep them in place because I want to cut both of those windows all at once, and I've positioned my circle die where I want it on this card front. And this, my friends, this may not look like much, but this is my secret weapon when it comes to partial die cutting. I'm going to partially die cut these windows onto all of these projects. So what that means is I don't want to cut that whole circle, but I want to leave a little bit of edge right there that's sticking out from this cutting plate. So I'm only going to cut the part that is within the 2 cutting plates, and anything that is sticking out of the cutting plates will not cut. So maybe this will make a little more sense when you see it here, but while I have my die cut machine out, I've gone ahead and switched to my precision cutting base and cut that spider web out of some Essentials by Ellen 43-pound vellum. Now you'll see here that when I remove my circle die, I have only cut part of the circle out of the card front. You see it's still attached there. So that's what I mean by partial die cutting. And in order to finish that cut out, I am going to take this over to my trimmer. I'm cutting both layers at once, and I am just going to cut between where that circle ends. So from the die cut line at the top all the way to the die cut line at the bottom, and that's going to complete my partial die cut. Now I am using my trimmer here, and it has that nice wire guide, but you could also use a craft knife and a straight edge. I just happen to not be so good with a craft knife. Trust me, it's dangerous. It's a long story. You don't want to hear it. So when I get that cut completed, you can see I have a partially die cut window on both my card front and my card base. And my plan is to span this spider web and kind of sandwich it between those windows there that are on the card front and the card base. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I have this wood grain background stamp. This is from Hero Arts and is designed by Leah Griffith. And I'm inking it up in some soft granite ink from Hero Arts. And I am going to place my card front onto that stamp and then rub all over it to get that wood grain pattern onto this card front. Now, I decided here that that color was just a little too intense. And because of sheer laziness and not wanting to have to recut all this again, I am going to flip my card base inside out and stamp on the other side of the card front to save myself from going through all that mess all over again. And I'm going to restamp this. I'm inking it up in some soft granite ink once again, but this time before I stamp it onto my card front, I am going to stamp it off on a piece of scratch paper. So I'm just removing some of that ink so the ink color will not be quite as intense when I stamp it. And then once again, just positioning my card front onto that background stamp, and I'm going to rub all over. And you can see I have just a very soft and subtle wood grain background on my card front, and it just gives a little texture and interest to the front of this card. Now I'm going to be stamping the pumpkins and the little Spidey Man from Julie's Got Candy stamp set, and I'm going to stamp them several times because I'm creating several projects here and I want to make sure that I have them all stamped at once. I'm using some VersaFine black onyx or onyx black pigment ink to stamp those, and then I just heat set them with a heat tool because it is a pigment ink and it takes a little bit longer to dry. Now I've stamped these onto some Bristol smooth cardstock or smooth Bristol cardstock, and I'm going to be using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color them in. And this is kind of me testing out the colors to make sure I have the color combination that I want. But I did, before I go into coloring these, I did want to show you a little comparison because I was I loved my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, but I wasn't quite getting the blend that I wanted on the Neenah Solar White cardstock. So I'm going to do a little comparison here. So I've blended this out on the Smooth Bristol cardstock here with, I'm using scarlet red, orange, and bright yellow for these pumpkin colors. And I'm going to do just a little side-by-side comparison, and this is just some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. Now I am going to zoom in here, because as I blend these out on this Neenah, you're going to see that I have to actually work a little bit harder to get them to blend. And when I blend out on the Neenah, there is just kind of not the softness that you get with the Bristol. There's not the smooth blend. It kind of tends to pill up a little bit if you add too much color. So here's where I zoom in, and you'll kind of see the difference here. So I'm starting out with the scarlet red and moving to the orange. And you can see that it blends, but it's not blending super easy. Now, if you're having trouble with your Zig Clean colors, I really recommend getting some of this Smooth Bristol. It is amazing for these markers. And thanks to my friend Nicole McGorrick, I actually discovered this. This was not my discovery. So you see the blend there on the Neenah, which is on the right, and on the left, I'm going to do the Bristol. I'm laying down the same colors, the scarlet red first, and then the orange. And look how that color moves immediately. The line of the blend is not quite so obvious, and that color just moves out and is smooth. It, I just, you have to try it. You have to try it. Just believe me. So I've sped the coloring up a little bit here because I didn't want to bore you to death. And I'm starting once again with that scarlet red marker. I'm adding it around the edges. I am going to blend it out a little bit with the orange here. And then finally, I'm going to take the bright yellow, which is actually a very orange-based yellow. It has a lot of, I don't know, red in it for a yellow. I'm not real sure. But I'm going to blend those all together. So my lightest part is going to be towards the center of the pumpkin where it's big and fat. And my darkest part is going to be around the edges. Now, I liked that, but I thought it needed a little bit more depth and warmth. So I brought in the mustard and added that to the very top and the very bottom, and then I just blended that out once again with the scarlet red. And I am going to color all of my pumpkins in the same way. And before I take them over to my die cut machine, I am going to prepare my sentiment strip. So I have the Happy Halloween sentiment from the Got Candy stamp set. I'm inking it up in some Versamark ink. By the way, my Versamark needs to be replaced. I had a project gone wrong, and don't ever take your Versamark ink pad to some ultra thick embossing powder and think it's going to be a good thing. It is not a good thing. So I've prepped the surface of this licorice cardstock with a little EK Success powder tool, stamped that in some Versamark ink, added some ultrafine detail embossing powder in white, and then I'm just hitting it with my heat tool to have that nice bright white embossed sentiment on my black cardstock. And now I am going to cut out all of my pumpkins and Spideys all at once. So I've taken, once again, a little bit of Post-it tape. I kind of neutralize it on my hand. You've probably seen Julie do that before. And position those dies right where I want them and then run them through my Big Shot machine. Now, before I adhere this little spider web into the window, I added a little Zig Wink of Stella clear glitter brush to make it a little bit shimmery because, you know, I got to have my sparkle on my cards. And then I've just taken little dots of the multi-medium matte finish adhesive from Ranger, added it just to the very tips of that spider web, and then put it over the window. Then I put a clear block on top of it to kind of keep it in place while it kind of sits up a little bit. And I've added some foam adhesive all over the back of my card front. Now I'm not adhering it yet. I'm going to do a little bit of playing around with my layout before I adhere it. So I'm adhering these little pumpkins here, these beautifully colored pumpkins, if I do say so myself, with some foam adhesive. I've added it just to the left side of that smaller pumpkin and then added a little tape runner adhesive because that's where it's going to overlap and I want it to sit flat. Then I'm going to take my sentiment strip and trim it down with a little banner end. I just cut a slit up the center and then cut from each corner to that center slit, and that makes a nice little fishtail banner end for my sentiment strip. And then I'm going to position it onto my card front. I've added, once again, just a little bit of foam adhesive on that right side and then some tape runner adhesive towards the middle where it will overlap with the pumpkins so that it all stays nice and flush. Now I have a little bit of this silver thread and I am going to use it to make my little Spidey's I don't know, web, but it's not his web, it's his little string where he's hanging down from. And what I've done is I've taken 2 layers of that and twisted it together to make it a little bit thicker so that it has a little bit more substance to it when I add it. And I've just kind of looped that over the card front and just attached it to the back with a little bit of adhesive. So now I'm just arranging a few little banners of some pattern paper here along with some glitter cardstock. And I've secured them with my tiny attacher and trimmed them down. And I'm going to add them to this card front with just a glue dot because that tiny attacher left a little bit of dimension or kind of bumpiness to the back of those banners. I went ahead and used a glue dot to adhere those. And now I can go ahead and adhere my card front right over the card base where those windows line up. And I have this really adorable, fun peekaboo window with that spider web. Now I finished this card front off with some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm just adhering those on with the multi-medium in the matte finish. And I also went back and added a little messy nest of that thread underneath the pumpkin. So I had to do a little card surgery there, but in the end it was worth it. And you can see little Spidey hanging down there, which I love so much. So now we are going to speed up because I don't want to bore you, but we are going to take those same basic concepts, the same products, and we are going to make a tag here. So I'm starting out by cutting 2 layers of the tag with the My Favorite Things stitch traditional tags, and once again partially die cutting that same circle die from the front of these tags. And I've adhered my little spider web over the back portion of the tag, the back layer of the tag. And I am making that messy nest once again. Now I had to do a little adjustment on this kind of layout. I couldn't use 2 pumpkins because it was a little too large. So I'm going to use just 1 pumpkin instead. And this time I was smart and added my little messy nest of silver thread behind the pumpkin before I adhered it down. I just used my little foam adhesive to adhere that down. And I'm going to sandwich these 2 die cut tags together just using a little bit of tape runner adhesive. Once again, I'm going to use the same pattern papers that I used before, just in a little different configuration. I wanted to keep all of the focus at the bottom, and in order to adhere that silver glitter strip, because glitter paper is hard to adhere when you're adhering to the front of that glitter strip, I used a little bit of the Be Creative tape to adhere that to the bottom of the black cardstock. And I'm just arranging all of these pattern papers along with that glitter cardstock, and I'm going to adhere them right over the bottom of that pumpkin. And once again, creating that double layer of silver thread to hang my little spider from. And I'm going to just loop it over the top and attach it between the 2 layers of the tag. So, you know, if you're smart, you learn from your mistakes. And I hadn't quite learned from my mistakes here because I adhered the tags together before I adhered that thread. But anyway, in the end, it all worked out. I had to do a little tag surgery there. And I finished the tag off by just punching a hole in the top using my Crop-A-Dile. I looped some more of that silver thread through, and then I went back and added some gray and white baker's twine to the top of that just to give it a little more weight. This tag is also stamped with the Hero Arts background stamp, and I did, of course, finish it off with some more Pretty Pink Posh sequins. So now it's a new day and a new manicure, and I had to wait for this Lawn Fawn pillow box die to come in the mail, and I'm going to be cutting it out of some Basil Card Shop cardstock in alpaca. And I wanted to show you kind of a color comparison here. The alpaca is on the left, the taffy is on the right. So this alpaca is much more gray than the taffy, even though when you hold up the taffy, it kind of appears gray on first glance. When you hold them up together, they're very different. So this die is nice because it puts those score lines and the fold lines all in there for you. And once again, I've partially die cut that circle window out of this pillow box, but you could see that tab was showing through my window. So I did need to trim a little bit off of that tab to make this work. I'm just adhering that spider web into the inner part of the pillow box here because I want it to be on the inside, and I'm going to add a little piece of clear acetate behind that window. And you want to make sure that when you're adhering this that you don't let the acetate overlap your fold lines on either the side or the bottom there. And I just kind of put a clear block over that and let that set up really well before I went and messed with this. I added a little Be Creative tape along that top portion there because my tab was a little too skinny to add the Be Creative tape to. And once I get that backer pulled off, then I can fold this over and I have my pillow box base. Now I've created my little grouping. I've used the smaller pumpkin along with those same pattern papers again. I've adhered those on with a little bit of foam adhesive, and I skipped the little spider web on Spider-Man here this time. And I wanted to show you that putting this pillow box together is really easy because those ends are already scored for you. You have the little fold lines. And I wanted to show you that the reason I love this pillow box so much is because it fits a gift card perfectly. Now, not all of these DIY little envelopes and boxes fit gift cards very well, but this one fits like a glove. And then, of course, with that acetate backer on there, you can add M&Ms, jewelry, Skittles, whatever you want and not have to worry about it falling through that spider web window. All of the products used in these projects are available at ellenhudson.com, and be sure to check out the Coordinating Classroom blog post where you can see more still shots of these projects as well as links to all the products used. Thanks for stopping by today. I really hope you enjoyed this special Peekaboo Saturday, and be sure to share your projects on social media using the hashtag EllenHudsonSaturday. Thanks for stopping by, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.